The notification popped up on my phone at 6:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I was still in bed, still half asleep, still adjusting to the strange silence of waking up alone after 14 years of marriage. My sister had told me to unfollow Marcus on everything, to block him, to create a clean break. But I hadn't done it yet. Some masochistic part of me wasn't ready to stop watching, so I saw it. The photo of Marcus on what looked like a beach somewhere tropical, drink in hand, smile on face, freedom radiating from every pixel. And the caption, typed with the casual cruelty of a man who had never learned to consider anyone's feelings but his own, finally free. New chapter. Best decision I ever made. The comments were pouring in. His friends, his family, people I had considered our friends for over a decade, all congratulating him. So happy for you, man. You deserve this. About time you started living your life. About time. Like I had been a prison sentence he was finally escaping. Like 14 years of marriage, of building a life together, of supporting his dreams while sacrificing my own, had been nothing but an inconvenience he was relieved to put behind him. I lay in bed and stared at that post for a long time. The beach, the drink, the smile, the hashtags, new beginnings, blessed life, finale free, finally free. He had no idea. He had absolutely no idea what he had just freed himself from. Because here's the thing about Marcus. He thought he was the smart one in our marriage. He thought he was the one who made the money, made the decisions, made everything happen. He thought I was the supporting character in his story, the wife who cooked and cleaned and smiled at his work events. He never understood that I was the one who had been holding everything together, the one who managed our finances while he spent recklessly, the one who maintained relationships with clients and colleagues who would have dropped him years ago if not for my careful diplomacy, the one who had been quietly, patiently building something of my own while he was too self-absorbed to notice. Marcus thought he was finally free. What he didn't realize was that he had just untethered himself from the only thing keeping him from complete disaster. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand who Marcus was, who I was when I married him, and how I ended up watching my ex-husband's life collapse from the comfortable distance of my own success. My name is Janelle Morrison. I'm 43 years old, and until 1 year and 2 months ago, I was married to Marcus Morrison, sales director at a mid-sized tech company, weekend golfer, craft beer enthusiast, and world-class narcissist. I didn't know he was a narcissist when I married him. Nobody does. That's kind of the whole point. We met when I was 27 years old. I was working as an accountant at a firm downtown, handling corporate taxes and trying to figure out what I wanted my life to look like. Marcus was 31, confident in the way that successful men often are, with the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He pursued me aggressively. Looking back, I can see that the intensity was a red flag. The way he called and texted constantly, the way he showed up at my office with flowers, the way he made our relationship feel like the most important thing in his world before he even really knew me. But at 27, I interpreted all of that as passion, as devotion, as proof that I had finally found someone who saw my value and wasn't afraid to show it. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. A beautiful ring, a rooftop restaurant, a speech about how I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I said yes with tears in my eyes, convinced that I had found my person. The wedding was lovely. Our families got along. Our friends danced until midnight. Everything seemed perfect. It wasn't perfect. It was never perfect. But it took me years to understand that. The first 5 years of our marriage were good, or at least what I thought good looked like. Marcus was building his career, climbing the ladder at his company, making more money every year. I was doing the same, advancing at my accounting firm, earning promotions and raises that I was proud of. We bought a house, a nice one, in a good neighborhood, with a backyard big enough for the children we talked about having someday. We took vacations. We hosted dinner parties. We looked happy in photographs. But underneath the surface, something was wrong. Something I couldn't quite name but could definitely feel. Marcus didn't like it when I was too successful. He never said it directly, but the signs were there. When I got a promotion, he'd find something to criticize about my work that same evening. When I closed a big account, he'd somehow turn the conversation back to his own accomplishments. When colleagues praised me, he'd make subtle jokes about how my job wasn't really that hard. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself he was just stressed, just competitive, just adjusting to having an ambitious wife. I made excuses for him because the alternative was admitting I'd married someone who didn't want me to succeed. Then I got pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult from the start. Morning sickness that lasted all day, complications that required bed rest, anxiety about whether the baby would be okay. I needed support. I needed a partner who would step up and help me through it. Marcus stepped back instead. He started working longer hours, started traveling more for business, started finding reasons to be anywhere but home with his pregnant, frightened wife. When I asked for help, he'd tell me I was being needy. When I expressed my fears about the pregnancy, he'd accuse me of being dramatic. I lost the baby at 14 weeks, a miscarriage that left me physically and emotionally devastated. And Marcus, my husband, the man who had promised to love me in sickness and in health, went on a business trip 3 days later because the timing was already locked in and I would be fine. I knew something was broken after that. I just didn't know how broken or how impossible it would be to fix. We never talked about the miscarriage. Marcus didn't want to, and I was too devastated to force the conversation. It became this silent wound in our marriage, something we walked around but never addressed. I threw myself into work. It was easier than dealing with my grief, easier than acknowledging that my husband had abandoned me during the worst experience of my life. I took on more clients, more responsibility, more hours at the office. And somewhere along the way, I started to outshine Marcus. It happened gradually. My firm was growing, and I was growing with it. I made partner at 35, the youngest partner in the firm's history. My income surpassed Marcus's for the first time. Clients specifically requested me for their accounts. Marcus hated it. He hated every single moment of my success. He never said so directly. Marcus was too smart for that. But the undermining became constant. He'd question my decisions, criticize my hours, suggest that maybe I was neglecting our marriage for my career. He'd make comments about how stressed I seemed, how different I was, how I wasn't the woman he'd married. He was right about that last part. I wasn't the woman he'd married. I was becoming someone stronger, someone who didn't need his approval, someone who was building a life of her own, and Marcus couldn't stand it. If you're enjoying this story, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next is where everything falls apart, and then, eventually, where it comes back together in ways neither of us expected. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and whether you've ever outgrown someone you thought you loved. I read every single one. Now let's continue. The affair started around year 10 of our marriage. I found out at year 12. Her name was Kylie. She was 28 years old, a marketing coordinator at Marcus's company, and apparently everything I wasn't. Uncomplicated, adoring, impressed by Marcus in a way I had stopped being years ago. I discovered the affair the way so many women do. A text message that popped up on his phone while he was in the shower. Can't wait to see you tonight. Last time was incredible. I stared at that message for what felt like hours. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Not Marcus. Not my husband. Not the man I had built a life with for 12 years. But the evidence was undeniable. Once I started looking, I found everything. The secret email account, the hotel charges disguised as business expenses, the gifts that had never been given to me. Marcus had been living a double life, and I had been too busy building my career to notice. I confronted him that night. I expected him to deny it, to lie, to gaslight me into thinking I had misunderstood. Instead, he did something worse. He admitted it, calmly, coolly, like he was delivering a quarterly report. Yes, I've been seeing someone, he said. Her name is Kylie. I'm in love with her. I felt the floor drop out from under me. In love with her. 2 years of lies and betrayal. And he was in love with someone else. What about us? I managed to ask. He shrugged. There hasn't been in us for years, Janelle. We're roommates who share a mortgage. I want more than that. I deserve more than that. Deserve. He deserved more. After everything I had given him, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had done to support his career while building my own, he deserved more. I should have screamed at him, thrown things, made a scene, but I was too shocked to react, too broken, too fundamentally shattered by the casual cruelty of the man I had loved. I want a divorce, he said, and I think we should keep this civil, for both our sakes. Civil. He wanted civil. He had been cheating on me for 2 years, had fallen in love with another woman, and he wanted our divorce to be civil. Fine, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You want a divorce? You've got one. The divorce proceedings were ugly. despite Marcus's request for civility. He wanted the house. He wanted half my retirement accounts. He wanted spousal support, claiming that he had supported my career during our marriage and deserved compensation now that it was ending. The audacity was breathtaking. He had cheated. He had lied. He had destroyed our marriage. And now he wanted to be rewarded for it. My lawyer, a woman named Angela Torres who specialized in high-asset divorces, was not impressed by his claims. He wants spousal support, she said during one of our early meetings. After a documented affair? Good luck with that. But Marcus's lawyer was aggressive, and Marcus himself was convincing. He played the victim beautifully, claiming that I had been emotionally absent during our marriage, that my focus on my career had driven him into another woman's arms. He painted a picture of a neglected husband seeking comfort where he could find it. Some of our mutual friends believed him. They looked at me with pity, as if I had brought this on myself by being too successful, too focused, too much. I didn't fight for those friends. They weren't worth fighting for. What I did fight for was a fair settlement. The house was sold and the proceeds split, despite Marcus's protests. The retirement accounts were divided according to state law, not his inflated sense of entitlement. Spousal support was denied because the judge saw through Marcus's victim narrative. When it was over, I walked away with my fair share and nothing more. But more importantly, I walked away free. Free from Marcus's criticism, free from his undermining, free from the constant, exhausting work of managing his ego while trying to build my own life. I was devastated. Of course I was. 14 years of marriage, destroyed by infidelity. But underneath the devastation, something else was growing. Relief. Pure, undiluted relief. I didn't have to pretend anymore. Didn't have to minimize my success to protect his feelings. Didn't have to play the supporting role in a story that was always supposed to be about him. For the first time in 14 years, I could just be myself. And that's when Marcus posted his finally free photo. The beach, the drink, the smile, the comments from friends celebrating his liberation from the burden of being married to me. I saw that post, and something shifted inside me. Not anger exactly, something colder, something more strategic, because I knew something Marcus didn't. I knew about the house of cards he had been building, the financial house of cards that was about to collapse without me there to hold it up. You see, Marcus thought he was the one who made the money. He thought his sales job was the engine that drove our finances. He never understood that my work as an accountant had been the foundation. I had managed our investments, monitored our spending, made sure we were diversified and protected against downturns. More than that, I had connections in the industry that Marcus didn't even know about. Connections that had been coming to me with business opportunities for years. Opportunities I had turned down because I was trying to be a good wife, trying not to outshine my husband. Now I wasn't trying anymore. The first year after my divorce was about rebuilding. Not from ruins exactly. I hadn't lost everything, but I had lost enough that I needed to recalibrate, to figure out what I wanted my life to look like now that I was making all the decisions myself. I bought a condo in the city, smaller than the house, but mine. I decorated it exactly the way I wanted, without considering anyone else's preferences. Every room reflected my taste, my personality, my vision for my life. I recommitted to my career with new energy, without Marcus's subtle sabotage, without the constant management of his ego. I found reserves of creativity and ambition I had forgotten I possessed. I took on bigger clients, developed new specialties, started building something that was entirely my own, and I started saying yes to opportunities I had been declining for years. A former colleague approached me about starting our own firm, something I had dreamed about for years but never pursued because Marcus had convinced me it was too risky, too time-consuming, too threatening to the stability of our marriage. There was no marriage anymore. There was no one to consider but myself. I said yes. Morrison Financial Consulting launched 6 months after my divorce was finalized. Just me and my partner Diane, working out of a small office space, building something from scratch. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was everything I had been afraid to want. By the time Marcus posted his finally free photo, I was already 3 months into building my empire. By the time a year had passed, that empire was thriving. But I didn't know, during those early days of hard work and hustle, just how badly things were going for Marcus. I didn't know that while I was building something new, his whole world was falling apart. I found out at a Christmas party, 11 months after our divorce. A mutual friend, someone who had stayed in contact with both of us, pulled me aside with gossip gleaming in her eyes. "Did you hear about Marcus?" she asked. "It's so sad." I hadn't heard. I had been too busy actually building a life to keep tabs on his social media presence. "He lost his job," she said. "About 4 months ago. Something about inappropriate conduct at work." Inappropriate conduct. I could guess what that meant. Kylie, probably. Or someone else. Marcus's pattern of pursuing younger women in the office had finally caught up with him, and Kylie left him, the friend continued. Apparently she found out he'd been talking to other women online the whole time they were together. She moved out of his apartment 2 months ago. I absorbed this information with a strange detachment. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt nothing at all. "Where is he now?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Living with his brother, I think. He couldn't keep up with his rent. He's been posting on Facebook about looking for work. But the market is tough right now." The market was tough. But the market had been tough for me too, and I was thriving. The difference was preparation, discipline, and the ability to face reality instead of running from it. Marcus had never been good at facing reality. He preferred his version of events, the one where he was always the hero and everyone else was the problem. That version was crumbling now. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying watching it happen. If you're still with me, hit that like button right now. Because what happens next is where Marcus hits bottom. And I want you to see what happens when someone who thought they were too good to fail finally faces the consequences of their choices. Tell me in the comments if you've ever watched an ex's life fall apart. Then keep watching. I didn't seek out information about Marcus after that Christmas party. I didn't have to. The universe kept delivering updates like a particularly vindictive postal service. 3 months later, I learned he had moved out of his brother's place. They'd had a falling out, something about money Marcus had borrowed and failed to repay. His brother had finally had enough of being treated like an ATM. 6 months after the divorce, the mutual friend updated me again. Marcus was living in a studio apartment in a rough part of town, still unemployed. The word in their industry was that he had been blacklisted, that his behavior at his last job had been worse than anyone initially realized. 8 months after the divorce, I stopped hearing updates. People had stopped talking about Marcus because Marcus had stopped being someone worth talking about. And then, 1 year and 1 week after our divorce was finalized, I saw him myself. I was leaving a restaurant downtown, one of those nice places where I took clients to celebrate big deals. My business partner Diane was with me, both of us laughing about something trivial, feeling good about the life we were building. And there, in the parking lot next to the restaurant, was Marcus's car. I recognized it immediately. The black SUV he had been so proud of, the one he had insisted on buying even though I had told him it was more than we could afford. He had made the payments for about 6 months after the divorce before defaulting. I knew this because my lawyer had sent paperwork when he had tried to claim I should be responsible for the loan. The SUV was parked in a far corner of the lot, away from the lights, and there was someone sitting in the driver's seat. It took me a moment to realize it was Marcus. He looked different, thinner. His beard had grown out in a way that looked less hipster and more homeless. His clothes, what I could see of them through the window, were wrinkled. He was living in his car. The man who had posted finally free with such triumph just a year ago was now sleeping in a parking lot outside a restaurant he couldn't afford to eat at. I stood there for a long moment, trying to figure out what I felt. Triumph? Satisfaction? The karmic vindication I had been dreaming about? What I actually felt was more complicated than that. I felt sad, not for the Marcus who had cheated on me and treated me badly, but for the Marcus I had married, the one who had had so much potential before he squandered it on ego and entitlement, and I felt grateful. Grateful that I had gotten out. Grateful that I had built something for myself. Grateful that I wasn't the one sitting in that car, wondering where my life had gone wrong. "Janelle?" Diane was watching me with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Let's go." But I didn't go. Not immediately. Something made me walk toward that SUV, toward the ghost of my marriage, toward the man who had told the world he was finally free from me. Marcus saw me coming. I watched recognition dawn on his face, followed by something that looked like shame. He fumbled with the door, opened it, stepped out of the car that had become his home. "Janelle," he said, "I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to see you here either." We stood there in the parking lot, two people who had once shared a life, now occupying completely different worlds. "I'm just waiting for someone," he said, to quickly. Meeting a friend for dinner. He was lying. Of course he was lying. The restaurant had a 2-week wait list, and Marcus was wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in days. He wasn't waiting for anyone except his own reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't call him out on the lie. What would be the point? How are you doing, Marcus? I asked instead. Really? Something in my voice must have broken through his defenses. Maybe it was the lack of judgment. Maybe it was just exhaustion. But he stopped pretending. Not great, he admitted. Things have been tough. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. I lost my job, he said. About 6 months ago. Kylie and I didn't work out. My brother and I had a falling out. I've been dealing with some challenges. Challenges. That was one word for it. I saw your company is doing well, he continued. Morrison Financial. I've seen the press. We're building something good, I said. It's a lot of work. He nodded slowly. I always knew you'd be successful. I just thought I'd be there to see it. The irony of that statement hung in the air between us. He had been there, and he had resented every moment of it. He had undermined and criticized and diminished me at every opportunity. And now he was standing in a parking lot, pretending he had always believed in me. Some things never change. What happened? I asked. With your job? He shifted uncomfortably. There were some accusations. Nothing serious. Just office politics. You know how it goes. I knew exactly how it went. I knew that office politics was code for he had been harassing women again and had finally been caught. I didn't press. There was no point. Marcus would never admit what he had done, never take responsibility for the choices that had led him here. Kylie left because she found out I'd been talking to other women, he continued, unprompted. She overreacted, honestly. It wasn't anything serious. Just messages. Just messages. The same way our marriage had been destroyed by just messages. The same minimization. The same refusal to acknowledge the harm he had caused. I'm sorry things are difficult, I said. And I meant it, in a way. I was sorry for him. Sorry for the person he could have been if he had ever learned to look beyond his own reflection. Thanks. He looked at the ground, then back at me. Do you think you could lend me some money? There it was. The real reason he had dropped the pretense. The real reason he was standing in this parking lot waiting. Not for a friend. For someone who might recognize him. Someone who might feel obligated to help. Someone like me. I should have said no immediately. I should have walked away. But something kept me standing there, looking at the wreckage of my former husband. How much? I asked. Just enough to get back on my feet. A few thousand. I'll pay you back as soon as I'm working again. A few thousand. He had no idea how much money I was making now. No idea what my company was worth. If he had asked for 50,000, I could have written the check without blinking, but I wasn't going to write any check. I can't do that, Marcus. His face shifted from hopeful to hard. Of course you can. You're doing well now. You have money. I'm your husband. Ex-husband, I corrected him. And I'm not going to give you money so you can continue avoiding the consequences of your choices. My choices? He stepped closer, and I saw a flash of the Marcus I remembered. The one who blamed everyone but himself. The one who believed the world owed him something. My choices? You're the one who destroyed our marriage with your career obsession. You're the one who put work before me for years. And now you're going to stand there and lecture me about choices? Diane was watching from the restaurant entrance, ready to intervene if needed. I held up a hand to let her know I was okay. Marcus, I said calmly, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. Our marriage ended because you cheated, because you lied, because you treated me like a supporting character in your story instead of a partner. Every single thing that has happened to you since our divorce is a consequence of who you chose to be, not me, you. He stared at me, and I watched several emotions cross his face. Anger, denial, and beneath it all, somewhere he probably didn't even recognize, the faint glimmer of understanding. So you're just going to leave me here, he said, in this parking lot, with nothing. I didn't leave you with nothing. You left yourself with nothing. Those are two very different things. I started to walk away, then turned back. If you want help, real help, I know some people who work in career counseling. I could give you their contact information. But the money? That's not happening. You need to figure this out on your own, Marcus. It's the only way you'll ever actually fix anything. He didn't respond, just stood there, next to his car home, watching me walk away. I didn't look back. The next few months were some of the busiest of my life. Morrison Financial closed 2 major deals that put us firmly on the map. We hired 5 new employees. We moved into a bigger office space with actual windows and a conference room that didn't double as a storage closet. I was working harder than I ever had, but it didn't feel like work. It felt like purpose, like becoming the person I was always meant to be. I thought about Marcus sometimes, not obsessively, not painfully, just occasionally, wondering if he had found work, if he had gotten off the streets, if he had learned anything from hitting bottom. The updates came sporadically. He had found a part-time job at a retail store. He was renting a room from someone he knew. He was slowly, painfully climbing back towards something resembling stability. I didn't reach out. It wasn't my place anymore, but I kept the career counselor's number saved in my phone, just in case he ever actually asked for help. He never did. If you've made it this far, subscribe right now, because what happens next is the part I didn't expect. The part where Marcus finally confronted who he actually was. And I want you to hear how it ended. Leave me a comment about whether people can really change. Then keep watching. 15 months after our divorce, I received an email. It was from Marcus. The first direct communication since that night in the parking lot. I almost deleted it without reading, assuming it was another request for money. But curiosity got the better of me. Dear Janelle, I've been trying to write this email for months. Every time I start, I end up deleting it because I don't know how to say what I need to say. I've been doing a lot of thinking since we ran into each other. You were right about everything. About our marriage. About me. About the choices I made that led me to that parking lot. I've started seeing a therapist. It was that or lose what little was left of my relationships. My brother agreed to let me stay with him again, but only if I got help. I'm glad he made me do it. I'm learning things about myself that I should have learned years ago. About how I treated you. About how I've treated everyone. About the patterns that led me here. This isn't a request for money or forgiveness or anything like that. I know I don't deserve either. I just wanted you to know that what you said that night got through. Not immediately, but eventually. I'm working on being better. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. I hope your business continues to thrive. I hope you find someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated. And I hope someday that you can remember at least some of our time together without pain. Thank you for not giving me the money. It was the first time in my life that someone held me accountable instead of enabling me. It hurt like hell, but I needed it. Marcus, I read that email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat in my office, watching the sun set over the city. People surprise you sometimes. Even people you think you know completely. Even people who have given you every reason to write them off forever. I didn't respond to the email. Not immediately. I let it sit in my inbox for weeks, thinking about what it meant. Thinking about whether I believed it. Thinking about whether it changed anything. Eventually, I wrote back, Marcus, thank you for your email. I know it wasn't easy to send. I hope your therapy continues to help. I hope you find the person you want to be. I hope you build a life that makes you genuinely happy, not just a life that looks good on social media. I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What happened between us left scars that still hurt sometimes, but I can wish you well. And I do. Take care of yourself. Janelle, that was it. No promises of friendship. No reconciliation. No dramatic scene of forgiveness and healing. Just 2 people who had shared a life, acknowledging that it was over and wishing each other well. Some stories don't end with grand gestures. Some stories end with small moments of grace, extended carefully across the distance. 2 years after my divorce, Morrison Financial was named one of the fastest growing companies in our region. We had expanded to 20 employees and were turning away clients because we couldn't keep up with demand. Diane and I celebrated with champagne in our corner office, looking out at the city that had become our kingdom. Can you believe we built this? She asked. 2 years ago, we were working out of a converted closet. I can believe it, I said. We always knew we could, and I had known. Somewhere deep down, beneath the years of being diminished by Marcus, beneath the carefully managed expectations and the fear of outshining my husband, I had always known what I was capable of. Marcus hadn't seen it. Or maybe he had seen it and had been threatened by it. Either way, his inability to support my success had become his own undoing. Because here's the thing about trying to hold someone back. It works for a while, but eventually, the person being held back breaks free. And when they do, They bring all that accumulated potential with them. Marcus had spent 14 years trying to keep me small. Now he was living in his brother's spare room, working retail, piecing his life back together one day at a time. And I was building an empire, not as revenge, not to prove anything to him, just because it was what I was meant to do, just because, freed from his constant undermining, I had finally become myself. There's a lesson in that, I think, about what happens when you stay with someone who doesn't want you to succeed, about the cost of dimming your light to make someone else comfortable, about the freedom that comes from finally walking away. Marcus posted finally free when our divorce was finalized. He thought he was celebrating his liberation from me. What he was actually celebrating was my liberation from him. A year later, he was living in his car, trying to figure out where his life had gone wrong. And I was just getting started. I saw Marcus one more time, about 3 years after our divorce. He had found steady work by then, something in sales again, but lower level than before. He had moved into his own apartment. He was still in therapy, still working on himself, still trying to become someone he could be proud of. We ran into each other at a coffee shop, the kind of random encounter that happens in cities, where paths cross unexpectedly and you have to decide what to do about it. He looked better, healthier. There was something different in his eyes, something that looked almost like peace. "Janelle," he said, "it's good to see you." "You too," I said, and meant it. "How are things?" "Getting there." He smiled, and it wasn't the old smile, the one that had charmed me decades ago. It was something more genuine, more humble. One day at a time, we talked for a few minutes. Small talk mostly. He asked about my business. I asked about his life. We navigated the conversation carefully, like people walking through a room full of breakables. Before we parted, he said something that stayed with me. "I'm glad things worked out for you, Janelle. I know I didn't handle our divorce well. I know I said and did things that were hurtful. But seeing you succeed, seeing you build something amazing, it helps me believe that good things are possible." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. "Take care of yourself, Marcus. You too." And that was it. The end of our story. Not with drama or tears or grand reconciliation. Just two people who had shared a life, going their separate ways. I walked back to my office and looked at the city spread out before me. The empire I had built. The life I had created. The person I had become. Marcus had posted finally free, and he had been right, just not in the way he intended. I was finally free. Free from a marriage that had held me back. Free from a man who couldn't handle my success. Free to become everything I was meant to be. And I had used that freedom well. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to this story. I want you to know something. If you're in a relationship where someone is trying to hold you back, where someone is threatened by your success, where someone is making you feel smaller than you are, you don't have to stay. You have potential you haven't even discovered yet. You have strength you haven't had to use. You have a future that's waiting for you to claim it. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing someone who never wanted you to win. My ex posted finally free after our divorce, celebrating his liberation from the burden of being married to me. A year later, he was living in his car, while I was building an empire. But here's the thing I learned. His downfall wasn't my victory. My success wasn't revenge. They were just parallel stories, unfolding simultaneously. His choices led him to a parking lot. My choices led me to a corner office. We both got exactly what we had been building all along. So if you're reading this and wondering whether you can survive the end of your relationship, whether you can rebuild after everything falls apart, whether you have what it takes to create something new, the answer is yes, you can. You will. And when you do, you'll look back at the person who doubted you and feel nothing but gratitude. Gratitude that they're gone. Gratitude that you're free. Gratitude that you finally have the space to become who you were always meant to be. My grandmother used to say that the best revenge is a life well lived. She was right. But I'll add something to her wisdom. The best revenge isn't even revenge at all. It's just living your life so fully, so authentically, so successfully, that the people who tried to hold you back become footnotes in your story. Marcus will always be part of my history. The 14 years we spent together shaped who I am, for better and for worse. But he's not part of my future. That belongs to me alone, and I'm using it well. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now. You're going to love what happens next. I'll see you in the next one.